أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Now, in talking about the life of this world, Hayat ad-Dunya, I want to talk about it from the perspective of a comparison. So a lot of times when we discuss the life of this world, one of the worst diseases that can infect the heart of a believer, or that can infect the heart of any person, is hubb ad-dunya, the love of this world. And the Prophet ﷺ has said in a hadith, the meaning of which, that the love of this world is the root of all evil things, the root of all evil. Whenever we become very, very attached to this life and be very, very attached to dunya, all types of bad things come out of that. And in fact, all types of suffering come out of that. So it's actually not just the root of disobedience, it's not just the root of masiyah, it's not just the root of sin, but it's also the root of suffering. The deepest type of suffering comes out of hubb ad-dunya. And it's interesting because a lot of times people think in the opposite way. They think that the one who is a believer is the one who's going to, suffer and is not going to be able to do the fun things and not going to be able to enjoy themselves, and rather the one who, the disbeliever who can do whatever they want, nothing is haram for them. They're the ones who are, life is a Disneyland for them. And this is absolutely untrue, because the true suffering, the real type of suffering, is the suffering that comes as a result of hubb ad-dunya, as a result of being unreasonably and in an unhealthy way attached to dunya, attached to this life and everything in this life. That actually is the core and the root of suffering for the human being. Because let's just think about it from just rationally, let's think about it. If you're holding on to something, and that thing that you're holding on to so tightly is temporary, is something that naturally breaks, something that naturally fades away, and that's what you're holding on to, well, what's going to happen to you? I mean, you don't have to be a religious person to just think about it. Just from a physical point of view, when you're holding on to something that is going to break, it can't hold you. You're holding on to a twig. You're holding on to something which is fading away. Over time, even if you think that it can hold you for a while, over time, it's fading away by its very nature. Every single thing in this life is passing away. Every single thing in this life is passing away. If it's another person that you're holding on to for dear life, if it's your money that you're holding on to for dear life, if it's your property or your status or your health or your youth or your beauty or anything in this life, if it's any of those things, your career, you think about people and their career is their whole life. Or you think about people who, like, for example, who do modeling. What is the most important thing to them? The way they look. Because that's their life, is the fact that they need to be thin, they need to be young. Actresses, like, what happens when these people become old? A model. Let's talk about a model. Maybe an actress, she can still get parts or something when she's old. But a model, what can she do once she gets old? An athlete, where their entire life is this game, football or basketball. What do they do when they can't play anymore? Isn't that day gonna come? When they're too old to play, or they're too old to model, or they got wrinkles? So that's when you see the pain. Because that's what your life revolved around, that's what you were holding on to. And that's when you get people who will do anything to hold on to it. And you have this crazy, actually it's considered an addiction to plastic surgery. It's an addiction. Can you believe that's a type of addiction? You go, you get plastic surgery, you love the fact that you can, become young, again, you can change something, and then these people become seriously addicted to it. Because this is something that's so important to them. It's what they're holding on to. It's what they're ultimately attached to. So because that thing is temporary, it will fade away, and when it does, that's when you become broken, and that's when you suffer. The other thing about dunya, by its very nature, is that it's unstable. So we said that it's passing away, it's temporary. Something is going, if you're young now, you're going to be old tomorrow. If you're beautiful now, you're going to have wrinkles tomorrow. This is the fact of dunya, right? The other thing about it is it's by its very nature unstable. There's no state in this life that's constant. If you're happy today, you're going to be sad at some point. If you're sad at some point, you're going to be happy at some point. If you're, no matter how you feel at one point, it doesn't last forever in that same exact state. Dunya is something that's constantly changing, and it's unstable. So now if you think about that, you're holding on, one thing that's very, very painful when you're attached to dunya is that as human beings, we don't like instability, right? Does anybody like instability? I know I don't. And I know that instability was something that always caused me personally a lot of heartache. The fact that something could be a certain way today, and I'm like, as soon as you get used to it, as soon as you get comfortable, it changes. It's like the nature, it's the sunnah of this life. So you get used to somebody being a certain way, right? Whether it's a friend or a spouse or whatever it is, someone being a certain way. And you're like, okay, we're good, right? Like, okay, and you get used to that. So now you have expectations from that person. So now where are your expectations? In that person. Your expectations are in something that is unstable by its nature, that is fading by its nature, and is weak by its nature. So you're expecting something now. Okay, you were this way today, you're going to be this way tomorrow. So what happens tomorrow? Like, what happens from your experience? It doesn't happen that way. That it changes. And the longer you've lived this life, and we have some people, alhamdulillah, live this life longer than others. The longer you live this life, the more you know this lesson. That it constantly changes. And if you put your expectation in it, it will let you down. Constantly. The more you put your expectations in it, the more it lets you down. And so the sort of the intensity of the pain that hubb dunya causes is proportional to the intensity of how much you love it, of how much you're holding on to it, and how much you're attached to it. So what's the solution? Right? So we talk about this is a problem. This is a disease. This is something that not only does it lead to disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it leads to pain. It leads to our own pain. So what's the solution? Well, the solution is, theoretically, is that we stop depending on dunya, we stop having our ultimate attachment be to dunya, and we instead depend only on what is stable, what is constant, and what never breaks. And that's the handhold of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah says in Surah Al-Baqarah that the one who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes that person as the one who has held on to the handhold that never breaks. فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا. That he has indeed held on to the handhold that never breaks. It's the sturdy handhold that never breaks. That means that for sure every other handhold definitely breaks at some point. Every other handhold will break. If it's the handhold of wealth, if it's the handhold of beauty, if it's the handhold of another person, if it's the handhold of status, if it's your house or your property, whatever it is, it's going to break. If that's what you're holding on to, you are only hurting yourself. That's the bottom line. We don't help Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we don't hurt Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We only help or hurt myself. So then this concept of, okay, so my ultimate attachment should be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I should stop being dependent on other than Him, right? So theoretically this is the solution. But then there's the question of how. It's a very difficult thing to do. How do you do it? So for that, I think that I want to bring it to this idea of, when you love something, bring it back. When you're in love with somebody, and sometimes, suppose you're in love with someone, you're totally into this person, and for some reason it doesn't work out, or you have to leave, that person has to leave you for some reason, or you have to leave that person. And you know how they say that you cannot get over a person until you find someone else to replace them. You can't get over, it's like you don't get over someone until you find someone better. It's this idea that as human beings, we don't want anything ever to be empty. There's like, there's like a place in us, there's like a hole in us, and it has to be full. So it's like we run from one to the other to fill it. We have one thing, we want it to fill us, it doesn't fill us, or say that it has to go away, so what do we do immediately? We want to fill it with something else. And we can't let go of this attachment until we find another one. It's like very hard for human beings to just have nothing. Like emptiness is very painful. Emptiness is something we try to avoid. So the idea here is, let me give you an example, and this was the example I wrote about, is that you think about a boy, a little kid, who sees a toy car and absolutely falls in love with it. And he wants that car. And he cannot think of anything but that car. That boy, every time he walks by the store and he sees that car, he's going to kind of have like an inner battle with himself, because he's going to want to take it. And he's going to have to actually restrain himself from stealing it. Right? But what happens if that boy looks past the toy car and now sees a real car? Now he sees the real thing. So he was in love with this toy Ferrari, but now he sees the real Ferrari. What happens to that boy's struggle? What happens to his love and attachment for the toy? What happens to it? It's like he doesn't, It's dwarfed. It's like now it's no longer that struggle to keep from stealing it. Dude, I saw something so much better. So what it does is the love for the real thing completely extinguishes, dwarfs, overpowers his love for the model, the lesser model. Now this is the point. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, in the Quran, He describes this life. He says that this life is ad-dunya. This life is ad-dunya, meaning that it's the lower life. It's the lesser life. It's the lesser model. And then when describing the akhirah, He says al-hayawan. That this dunya is hayat ad-dunya. Hayat means the life of ad-dunya, the life of that lower one, the lower life. And hayat in Arabic means life, regular life. But when describing akhirah, the hereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, He uses the word hayawan. And hayawan means it's like an exaggerated version of the word haya. It's an exaggerated life. There's the lesser life, and then there's the real thing. So the idea here is that this life is like that toy car. It's the lesser model, sort of the real thing. Everything in this life, if you examine it, everything in dunya is just sort of like an echo, or sort of like a glimpse of akhirah, of the hereafter. Everything. So for example, what are the things we enjoy in this life? What are the things that make us happy in this life? Well, being in the company of those we love, right? That's also just a glimpse of what that would be like in Jannah. Love, like the idea of love, like something that in this life we would people give anything for, right? And yet, however great love could be in this life, it is always imperfect, it is always temporary. But in the hereafter, it's neither temporary nor imperfect. That the love that you have in Jannah is the perfect form. Spouses, people, right? This is the coolness of your eyes in this life even. But is your spouse ever going to be perfect? Is your spouse ever going to be perfect? No. But in Jannah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the spouses, He says the pure spouse, like the Jannah version of your spouse is different. Is different than the version here. It's the Jannah version, right? So now they don't have those same things that bother you in this life. They have, so again, even those things in this life which make us happy, which we love, which make us, it's kind of like, you're at a store, and if the person at the store wants you to buy their perfume, so what do? They pass out what? Samples. What does the sample do? The sample makes you attached to the real thing so that you are going to want to strive to get the real thing. And you're going to give from your money to do it, to get it. That's what this life is. This life is just a sample. Everything that we love in this life, everything we hold on to, everything that makes us happy, everything that we enjoy is just a sample of what it would be like in Jannah. Everything. So, subhanAllah, even down to the fruit. Because we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, for example, that there's certain fruit in Jannah, and it's fruit that we have some version of in this life. Rumman, for example. This is pomegranate. But the pomegranate of Jannah, is it like the pomegranate here? No, it's not. And that's what we're told in a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that every time the person in Jannah sees something, they say, oh, this is like what we had in earth. But it's not. It's just something that is like, it's just an example. It's just we're told that it's just something that's like a similitude, but it isn't like the Rumman here isn't like the Rumman there. That what we see of beauty in this life, I mean, think about it. Really, we should be thinking like that. When you see and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you guys, we happen to live in one of the most beautiful parts of the earth. California has a disproportionate amount of beauty, really, and like, I mean, just look at the walls. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation. Imagine, like, if dunya is this beautiful, how beautiful could Jannah be? And that's the point. This is just a sample. All of it is. And Allah says that He has saved for the believer what no eye has ever seen, and no heart has ever conceived of. This is just everything so this is how we have to change the way we see this life. Let this life be a pointer for the next life. Let it instill in you a desire for the next life. That's the point of it. Because you can never get full satisfaction from it. No matter what it is, it's a pomegranate, it's a spouse, it's a car, it's anything. It can only satisfy you to a certain degree, but it can never fully satisfy you, because as a human being, we want things that are perfect. We want things that never end. But this life isn't designed that way. So it cannot fully satisfy us. It's just like the sample that you get in the store. Yeah, it's like the sample at Costco, right? It's just like the sample. You taste it. It's just a taste. But it never fully satisfies you. I mean, you're going to get satisfied by like a crumb of cheese, that you get in the sample, or a drop of perfume that you get from the sample. They're not going to give you enough to satisfy you, because then what? Then you wouldn't be buying it. Then you wouldn't be striving and wanting and desiring the real thing. So this life it's designed to just pique your interest. It's just designed to show you a glimpse of what could be, but it never is the real thing. And it never will be fully satisfying. It will never fully fill you or satisfy you, because it isn't the real thing. So any enjoyment that we have in this life is supposed to make us, think about the perfect version, ultimately. Okay? Now, we talked right now about all of the good things in this life, and all of the things that give us happiness, and all the things the beauty and all of that, right? But is that all there is in this life? There's the other side too, right? There's the pain. There's the physical pain. There's the emotional pain. There's the psychological pain. There's the loss. So then, how does that fit in? In exactly the same way. So remember we said that everything good in this life, everything beautiful, everything that gives you happiness is supposed to be a sample and a glimpse of the real version, the full version, right? But it's actually the same thing with everything bad too. Let me give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has showed us fire in this life, right? Why has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala given us fire in this life? Well, part of it is that we know that the fire in this life is only a glimpse of the real fire of Jahannam, wa'udhu billah. The physical pain of this life is only a glimpse of the physical pain of Jahannam, wa'udhu billah. So then, if the good things are supposed to make us yearn for the real version, the bad things, the painful things, should make us fear and guard ourselves from the real version. See, in the same way, you know, when someone gets burned in this life, a'udhu billah, someone burns themselves, this is a sign. This is, we should see fire and say, protect us from the hellfire. It should remind us of the real version and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. When we feel pain in this life, whether it's physical or emotional pain, we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from the real version, because whatever we go through in this life, there is no comparison to the next life. And there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says that a person who had experienced nothing but pleasure in this life, nothing, pleasure, right, in quotations, nothing but happiness, ease, everything, that they would go to Jahannam, and just one dip in Jahannam, they will say, I have not experienced anything, any pleasure at all. Just so you see, all of dunya compared to just one dip in Jahannam. And the one dip in Jahannam overpowers any thought of their entire life on this earth. And the other way too, you can turn it on. And the other way too is that someone who experienced only pain in this life, no ease, if that's even possible, right? Most of us, we have, alhamdulillah, we have ease, we have hardship, we have a mix, right? We don't only have hardship. But someone who would have nothing but, you can just had the hardest life, their entire life, and one dip in Jannah, they would say, we never experience hardship. So you see the same thing, that one dip of the real thing completely overpowers this entire life, or any lesser version of pleasure in this life, because it's the lesser version. So in talking about how do we, again, the idea that a lot of people struggle with, how do we detach, in a sense, from the false things, or how do we stop loving this life? How do we stop putting all of our hope in this life? How do we stop depending on the temporary things of this life? How do we stop? Because we can know in our mind that this life is temporary. We can know in our mind everything is passing away, but yet we continue to put our hope in dunya. We continue to run after dunya. We're running after dunya. We're running after dunya. Whether we, honestly, subhanAllah, sometimes we don't even realize that we're running after dunya. We think of ourselves as somebody who's not worldly. We think of ourselves as someone who's not materialistic. I'll tell you the truth, personal experience. Even though I considered myself a religious person, right? And I didn't consider myself a materialistic person. Why did I not consider myself a materialistic person? Well, because I wasn't very interested in cars. I wasn't very interested in jewelry. I wasn't very interested in, too much into clothes or that kind of thing. Those were not my attachments. But what were my attachments? I still had attachments, and they were attachments of dunya, but they were not the same type that you would consider usually as attachments to dunya. They were attachments to people in dunya. They were attachments to things working out the way I wanted them in dunya. They were attachments to things need to be this way. Things need to be this way. I'm an idealistic person. I put all my ideals where? In dunya. So even though I'm praying and I'm fasting and I'm doing these things and I'm religious, right? But where was my ultimate hope? Where was my ultimate attachment? It was as if it was all here and now. I needed things to be perfect, and I needed things to be a certain way here and now, today. It's impatience, and it's all, the root of it is an attachment to dunya. And ultimately, it's another form of love of dunya, hubb dunya. So, we need to break out of this idea that hubb dunya, love of dunya, the thing that the Prophet ﷺ is warning us against, that it's only restricted to loving material things, loving, big houses, clothes, cars. That's one form of hubb dunya. But it comes in other forms. And this is the hardest form. The hardest form to recognize, and the hardest form to break, I believe. Because it's people that we love. It's the people that we love, and not just the people that we love, the people we are told to love by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. Are we not supposed to love our spouse? Are we not supposed to love our children? Are we not supposed to love our fathers? Are we not supposed to love our brothers? Are we not supposed to love our friends? Yes, we are. But here's the problem. We love these things in the wrong way. And what happens is these things take over the love that was supposed to be given to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Without us even noticing. Without us even noticing, we put our hope in this life over the next life. Without us even noticing. We say, yeah, we believe in the hereafter, we believe in Jannah, we believe we're going to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, but it has no part in how we live our life. It plays no actual part in how we live our life. Every little disappointment, it's the end of the world. Everything that didn't work out the way we want it, we can't handle that. Why? Because we have put so much into here and now in this life. We can't even handle a single disappointment. We can't even handle a single loss. Because it's all about this life, without us even noticing. So what I'm saying now is, recognizing these things, recognizing hubb dunya in ways and in places that we normally wouldn't be able to see. It's very subtle. Why do I say that it's hard? One of the hardest things to detect is because it is within the halal that these things happen. It is buried within the halal attachments. And to that point, I want to mention an ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran. And it has to do with love. And in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is warning us of something. And the warning has to do with love. In the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if your love for, or if these things, so first Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by listing a number of things which we all naturally love. If your fathers, and among those things are your fathers, your sons, your spouses, your commerce, meaning your job, your career, your dwelling, your house. If those things, now every single thing that I just listed, is anything of it haram? Did I list boyfriend? Did I list girlfriend? No, right? It said spouses. Did it say haram income? No, it's just your income, it's your commerce, it's your business. The Prophet ﷺ did, and Khadija did have business, right? If any of those things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Messenger, and striving in His cause, then wait until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings about His decision. This is a translation. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not love the disobedient ones. And here, this is, again, let's talk about this ayah, because this is just a translation, but what's the concept here? That all of these things are halal, but the problem is when we love these things as we should only love Allah, or we love these things more than we love Allah, His Messenger, and striving in His cause. And when you do that, that's the problem. When you do that, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, here Allah is warning us really for our own good, right? Because who is going to suffer when you do that? You do. The one who loves anything even of the halal things, more than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause, he himself pays the price. He himself actually is the one who suffers for it. Okay, so let me then get into how do you even, because this is very conceptual. I don't think anybody in this room, anyone who calls himself Muslim is not going to say that in fact, I do love my spouse more than Allah. Or I do love my children more than Allah, which is one of the biggest tests for women, mothers, is their children. I do love my career more than Allah. No one admits this. But can I ask you guys a question, or a few questions? What do you think about all day? What do you think about all day? Really? What worries you most? What keeps you up at night? What's the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning? What's the last thing you think about before you sleep? What do you think about when you say Allahu Akbar and you're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now let's ask ourselves, where are we? Where are we in this? When, again, we don't say we love these things more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what are we actually consumed by? What is actually occupying our hearts and our minds all the time? Most of the time, it's not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It really isn't. It's these other things. It's our children. It's our spouses. It's our job. It's school, maybe. These are the things that we actually, in a sense, love most. Now the problem comes. You will be tested in those things. Because we will always be tested in the things we love. You will always be tested. Ibrahim alayhi salam, what was he tested in? He was tested in his love for his son. Because that was the hardest thing. That was the greatest test. So you will be tested in those things. Now part of the test, why is it a test? Because we love those things so much. Part of the test is to show us we have a problem. And part of the test is to cure the problem. Part of it is to cure the problem too. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. He's not just there like a professor trying to test you and then just watch you fail. Allah is also the doctor, and Allah is high above any analogy, but Allah also wants to cure you of your disease. So in the test, sometimes, whether the test is loss, what the test is, in the test, you will both be aware of the problem and inshallah cured of the problem if you go about the test in the right way. If you respond to the test in the right way with at the very least sabr, patience, then that test itself will be a purification for you from these things, from these diseases, these attachments to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the love of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, if something gets taken from you, any of these things get taken from you, that's a test. The pain of it is going to show you that, maybe you loved this thing in the wrong way. But then the fact that it was taken from you itself, what does it make you do? Now you depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You turn completely to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that before you weren't able to do because you were distracted with this other attachment. You were ultimately your heart was facing this other thing, and when it was taken away, it caused you excruciating pain, but it made you face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It made you refocus and reorient your heart on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it was also a cure. And this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does describe the hardships and calamities in the Quran. And He says one of the purposes of hardships and one of the purposes of these calamities, these adversities that happen to the believer, He says, لِيُمَحِّصَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Tamhis. Tamhis means that process that you, for example, put gold through. You're taking gold and you want to purify it. What do you do to it? You heat it up. When you heat gold, you remove the impurities from it. That's the process that happens to a believer in hardship. You're heating up something, but you're purifying it. That's for the believer, the one who responds in the proper way to these hardships. Know that it is purifying you, it is cleaning you. And one of the things that's purifying you and cleaning you of is these attachments. You were distracted with this thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took it away from you, so now you reorient. Now you're facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala completely in a way that you didn't otherwise do. And even when you look at Ibrahim alayhi salam, in the test of having to slaughter his son, what's happening here? He has this very strong love for his son. In the fact that he's being tested and being told to slaughter him, what he's really slaughtering is his attachment. Because now that he's able to do it, when he gets to a point where he's able to do it, he's saying, Allah, I love you more. Right? He's not just saying it, because we say it, but he's really saying it with his actions. Like he's saying it completely, not just with his words, but with his heart and with his entire self, because he was willing to kill his son just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him to. So he's saying, I love you more. The action is saying it. And once he was able to do that, he was able to keep his son too. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't actually make him do it. But in that process, he is being purified of any, his tawheed is being perfected. His tawheed is being perfected because he's able to say, I love you more, Allah, than even my son, who he loved so much. So it's a process of purification for all of us. When even if something isn't taken away from you. I'm going to give you another example which is more common. When you have an attachment to something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that is not good, that is not right, what will happen often is that thing will hurt you. That thing will cause you pain. Will maybe again and again and again disappoint you, hurt you, let you down, maybe insult you, and you don't understand. You don't understand, why is this happening again and again? Why is this person that I love so much, this person that I would give anything for, why do they keep hurting me? Really, part of this, what we have to learn from this is part of your cure. It really is, because when something hurts you again and again and again, you don't have any, really, naturally, you don't have any choice but to detach from it. And this is what happens when we have an attachment to dunya, or we have an attachment to anything else. That very thing hurts us again and again and again until we're able to detach from it. And subhanAllah, you will not find that you have a proper relationship with it, whether it's a person or something in dunya, until you can have the proper attachment. You will not have a stable, you will know when there's something wrong with the attachment, because you're always being hurt. It's like a constant drama. Certain relationships are just constant drama. You have certain friendships, they're just constant drama. You have certain relationships, constant drama. That is an indication that there's a problem. It's not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it is an unhealthy attachment. And you won't have that healthy relationship and that stability somewhat, No one is, of course, this life isn't completely, like I said, ever completely stable, but you will not have that healthy, interaction and somewhat, some type of, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, when he says that he created for you from among yourselves spouses, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, that you may dwell in tranquility with them. You will never have tranquility so long as there is the wrong type of attachment there. It doesn't go together. What goes with the wrong type of attachment is what Plato said, that love is a serious mental illness. What's he talking about? He's talking about the type of love which is all wrong, which is based on loving something as you should only love Allah. Yes, then it is like a serious mental illness. and it will cause you the same pain as a serious mental illness or a serious attachment or a serious addiction, a drug addiction. That's why those relationships are like that. The tranquility that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, and the mawadda and the rahma, that can only happen when it's a healthy relationship, not based on false attachments, but that the ultimate attachment is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That can only happen when Allah is loved most. That can only happen when Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause are loved most. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. So inshallah I will just take a moment inshallah to absorb, and then I'll take questions and reflections inshallah. Okay, does anyone want to begin, inshallah? There should be, yes. Okay. Okay. So she's asking that the problem is the detachment. How do you do that in order to have that sukoon that you can have in a relationship, or that you should have, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes that there should be, for example, in the marital relationship, right? That, and really in any, potentially in any relationship, how do you practically detach and have the right amount of detachment in order, and how do you know? Okay. Yes. Right. So how do you know when how do you know that you're having the right type of balance, and that you when you have to let certain things go and when you have to hold on? So this is a good question, and to answer the first question, you said how okay, so how do you detach just enough, but then still, because again, it's the thing that's so complicated here is that we don't leave dunya altogether. Yeah, as we know that from the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, we are not to be like monks, right, who don't get married and who always are fasting, or who always pray and never sleep, but rather that there's a balance, that the Prophet ﷺ, that the that the Prophet ﷺ, he got married and he fasted some, he broke his fast some, he prayed some, and he slept some. So we have to have that balance. The hardest thing, honestly, is the balance. And maybe it would be a lot easier if you just went and hid in a mountain or something and you never dealt with anybody, right? But that isn't the proper type of relationship that we're supposed to have with dunya. The hardest thing is that we have to be in dunya with our bodies, but our heart has to be with Allah. We have to be in dunya with our bodies. We have to be here, but our heart should be with Allah. That's the hard thing, that we don't let anything else capture our heart of dunya. Practically, how do you do that? I think that the more that one, going back to the example of the toy car and the real car, the more that someone sees the real thing and just compares it to the lesser model, just naturally there will be that, overpowering. The real thing will overpower the false thing. Doesn't mean that it kills it. Again, let's go back to it. Doesn't mean you can't ever have a toy car, or that you may not enjoy a toy car. No, you will, maybe, as a child you like toy cars and you can get them. But when you start to understand and see it and compare it to the real thing, you know which one's real and which one isn't. So nobody is saying, let me clarify, nobody is saying you can't be involved in the toy car. You can't be involved in dunya. You can't maybe even love things in dunya, love people in dunya. Obviously, the Prophet ﷺ loved his wives. The Prophet ﷺ loved his children. He loved things, and we love things of dunya. But that's not the point. The point we're talking here is about ultimate love. First of all, we love our spouses, we love our children, we love our career, our business, these things that are listed in the ayah. But the problem is when you love those things more than Allah and His Messenger and striving in His cause. The problem is when you love those things compete with your love for Allah. And remember when I asked you the question, what do you think about all day? That's an indication that something's competing. Because if we say that the whole heart is for Allah, the heart and the mind are connected. Whatever's in my heart is going to fill my mind. Whatever's in my heart, I am going to think about all day and all night. And I can't get it off my mind. That's how we need to be with Allah. You know the concept of dhikr? What's the concept of dhikr? Dhikr is remembering Allah. When? All the time. Kathiran, 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 kathiran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to remember Him, He doesn't just say remember Him, He says kathiran after it. A lot. Guess what? When you love something, you can't help but remember it a lot. It's just an indication of love. And the other way around too, by the way, it works both ways. When you love something, you naturally remember it all the time. But it works the other way too. When you remember something all the time, you start to love it more. It becomes more important to you. Let me tell you why. Suppose that you don't love something, but you're reminded of it again and again and again and again. The fact that you're always reminded of it increases its importance and your attachment to it. This is even in media theory. Like, I studied media theory, and one of the theories is that when you certain events or certain political issues are mentioned in the media, that the amount of time it's mentioned is related to how important a person thinks it is. So something that they're exposed to more and more, they will rate those things as being more important issues. Pardon? Uh-huh. Yes. Yes, it has to do with the number of okay. So what she's saying is that just by the number of times the president repeats something in a speech, people will rate that as more important, even if it wasn't. I mean, even if he was just talking about he just repeated it many times, it becomes the most important. Yes, so when you're reminded of something again and again and again, naturally you put importance to it. Dhikr is related to love, and love is related to dhikr. Right? So the two work. The more, if we don't have enough love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remember Him more, you'll love Him more. So if you need to increase your love for Allah, your attachment to Allah, remember Him more. Read more Quran, pray more, make more dua, be around those who remind you of Him. Remember Him, remember Him, remember Him. The more that He's mentioned, the more you will begin to love Him. Oh, yes. Mhm. Yes. Yeah. Right. So she's talking from a personal experience that when she was dealing with an attachment, she'd find herself doing things related to it or that reminded her of it. And so what she had to do was actually cut that off. And the things that, because it was something that was not healthy for her, and so she had to cut off even the reminders of it. But you notice how when you're attached to something, you want what will remind you of it. You just want to be around other things that will because it's comfortable, because you love it. I mean, you just want reminders of what you love. It's just the way we are. And that what she did was she replaced those things that she was doing to remind her of that attachment with the remembrance of Allah. And she was fit, like, practically, these are practical things. You replace it practically. You know, yeah, good. You're noticing to stop. Yeah. So, yes. So she's saying she'll find when she finds herself spending too much time on something. So this is another practical, again, indication. Too much time either thinking about the thing, talking about it, worrying about it. What worries you most? What causes you the most fear? These are all indications of attachments. What causes you the most happiness? Think about the thing that makes you the happiest. The thing that makes you the most angry, the thing that makes you the most fearful. Whatever is really igniting these emotions in us is an indication of what we love most. They're related. The thing that can make you most angry, know that it's related to an attachment. For sure. Thing that makes you most happy, thing that makes you most sad. What is the thing that makes you cry? And makes you cry a lot, and makes you cry often. It's very clear, like when we look at these things, then we can pinpoint what really do we love most. And practically speaking, cutting yourself off from those things that remind you, because we feed attachments. One just practical example is when say somebody's like attached to another person, it's just like practical example, and they're like, oh, I'm trying to get over this person, but they check their profile like every few minutes or every day, then it's we feed, what I'm saying. We're not very we're not really doing those things that will help you break these attachments. You're feeding them, just like any addiction. You don't say, I'm trying to get over my alcohol addiction, but you're taking sips of alcohol every day. It's just, or even if you're not taking sips, but you're looking at it, you just sit and look at the beer, or whatever it is, the whiskey, and you're just staring at it, or you surround yourself with it, but you're saying you're trying to get over it. Even if you're not drinking, it's all you're thinking about, right? So this is the way we have to see these things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Again, to answer your question, how do you have the proper, balance? I think increasing the part that Allah plays, increasing the space that Allah takes, will naturally decrease the dependence on other than Him. Dependence. I'm saying dependence because it isn't like, okay, you need to not love these things. But I'm talking about, first, loving Allah most, and second, dependence, hope, expectations need to be in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And part of this is not having it in oneself either. We also depend on our own selves. We depend on our own actions. We depend on our own means. And we think that those things are going to make stuff happen. And that's not true. Allah makes stuff happen. Allah makes stuff happen. I don't make anything happen. I do my part as an act of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I am not making stuff happen. We have to be very clear about that. Allah is the one who makes things happen. When Musa alayhi salam was told to strike the sea with his staff, believe me, Musa alayhi salam wasn't the one who split the sea in half. He did strike the sea, but by no means does striking a sea make it split in half. Allah made it split in half. But Musa was commanded, alayhi salam, to do something. He did it. Obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah makes it happen. Allah says, مَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. Whoever has taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fears Allah, we do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us as an act of obedience to Him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever has that taqwa, يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا, Allah will make a way out for him and provide him from places he never imagined. وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. So our job is to do what Allah tells us to do, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes things happen for us. Allah will make the way out. Allah will open things for us in the way He wills, in the way He pleases, but by no means is it us making it happen. One of our biggest problems is we think, I talked about depending on other things, depending on people, depending on money, but we also depend on ourselves. We think we have power, we think we have control, and we have none. We have none. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. There is no change of state, no power, no strength except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have no power. I have no strength, and I have no ability to change anything. As soon as we can realize that, then we can, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can start to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right way, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes things happen. Allah opens things. Allah opens Red Seas. Yes. That's true. That part of our attachments is the attachment to needing a sense of control. We have an illusion of control, and we need to hold on to that because we think it makes us feel safe, but that's the most unsafe thing. Imagine if you were in your own protection. Imagine really if you actually had some control. That would be scary. I think that would be very scary because who am I? Like, imagine if I actually had to depend on myself. I am so nothing, and I am so weak, and I am so powerless. I think that should scare us. This is something the Prophet ﷺ asked for protection from. لا تكلني إلى نفسي طرفة عين. Do not leave me to myself for the blink of an eye. That's something we should be very frightened of, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would ever leave us to ourselves. So it is actually, the idea that I'm more secure when I feel control is nonsensical, because we should feel more secure when the one who is most powerful is in control. I mean, would you feel, imagine if all of your affairs were entrusted, or rather your affairs, the affairs of the country, affairs of the world were entrusted to a 2-year-old. Would you feel secure? Like, whatever the 2-year-old decided, well, that's what's going to happen. If the 2-year-old, yeah. Like, you got a good example. Imagine if the affairs of the entire world, not just your affairs, were entrusted to a 2-year-old. You should be pretty scared. But imagine, it's really someone who has no power, no knowledge, no idea about anything. That is a human being. That 2-year-old is us human beings. We should feel secure when our affairs are entrusted to the one who is Al-Qadir, the one who is able, most able. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the most power. Al-Qadir, right? We know that, subhanAllah, we have no power, no strength, no ability to change anything. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm. 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 So the point she's making, like, actually, it's a really good point. We get very, so we get very worried when someone else is going to see our wrongdoing, right? If somebody else is going to expose us or see what we're doing, and yet, obviously, the entire time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees. We don't feel that same shyness. We don't feel that same, humiliation to commit those sins in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we feel very humiliated and afraid if someone else would see it. And that's a deficiency in our iman, a deficiency in our tawheed, because ultimately it doesn't matter. Well, I mean, ultimately we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover our faults, from everything, from everyone, right? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to cover our faults in this life and in the day of judgment. But ultimately, who's the judge? It's not the people, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But nobody likes to be exposed, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of His mercy is that He does cover the sins of Bani Adam. He covers our faults. He covers our faults in this life, and He covers our faults in the hereafter. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He does, and He overlooks and forgives us for all of our faults and our wrongdoings. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's true. That's the way we are. But you're right. It's true that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always saw, yeah. Didn't hit you, like, yeah, yeah, that's true. No, I mean, it's because we don't have we don't have strong enough iman that we worship Allah as if we see Him, right? So when the Prophet ﷺ described ihsan, the highest level of iman is to worship Allah as if you see Him. But we don't really worship Allah as if we see Him. We worship Him as if He's not watching us. So, or we don't, whatever, the way we live our life is as if He's not watching us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh, yes. 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 Okay. So she talks about the fear of loss, that you become consumed with the fear, even if the thing isn't, you're not losing it, but you become consumed with the fear of loss. That's also an indication. That's also part of the pain of attachments. You've hit the nail on its head. You really hit it when you said that, because remember I said that when you have these false attachments, they end up hurting you. As a result of that false attachment, as a result of the hubb dunya, we actually feel pain. One of the main sources of the pain is that fear of loss. It comes as a result of that improper attachment. I know exactly, subhanAllah, it's actually one of the signs that there is a problem in our attachment, and it's one of the sort of the adhab of having that, the torment of having those things that we cling on to, as we should only cling on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that we are so afraid of losing it. Part of the fact is that it's temporary, and we know it. And when you lose something that you are attached to in that way, it is so painful. So that's why we're afraid. Imagine if that type of dependence and that type of attachment were on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You never have to be worried about losing it. You would no longer have that fear of loss, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't something you lose. So it's definitely part of it. It's definitely an indication. It's that, it's that sting to tell you change, like you need to change something. Pain, especially, this very, very intense pain, this consistent, constant pain, is an indication that you have to change something. When you're, when you're running and you have a heart problem, what's going to happen is you're going to get pain in the chest. That pain in the chest, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put there as an indication that you need to see a doctor and you have to fix this heart problem. When you feel, the pain of being burnt, that pain is there so you'll move your hand. There's pain as it serves a purpose. We think, we live in a culture where it's like you just have to just take a pill if you feel pain, right? You just want to numb it. But we don't realize that pain is an indication that there's a problem. When you have an infection, and say you have an infection in your tooth, how would you know it? You would have no way of knowing it except that it causes you pain, right? In excruciating pain. Stop and make a change. Yes, it's your body's way of telling you to stop and make a change. And this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designs it in the physical world, and this is the way it is in the emotional and psychological world too. That when you feel there's a certain type of pain, it's not normal, and it's not supposed to be like that all the time. It's a problem, means you need to see a doctor, you need to make a change. You need to change something. The fear of loss is huge. Actually, I write about the fear of loss. One of my articles, I think it was the second part of Why Do People Have to Leave Each Other. It's called People Leave, But Do They Return? And in that one, I talk about the fear of loss. I say when we take a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and instead of holding it in our hand, we inject it into our hearts. What happens then is we love those things, we become ultimately attached to those things instead of Allah. Take a place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have. We begin to become in love with the gift and leave the giver. That's the problem. The gift is intended to bring us closer to the giver. But instead, we become attached to the gift. When I give you a gift, I give you a purse. What's the point? That's the point. The point is for you and me to become closer, not for you to fall in love with the person and throw me aside. You got me? But this is yeah, okay, then I'm taking it back. No, but here's the thing, that we do this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gives us gifts. His gifts, the purpose of the gift itself is to bring us closer to Him. That's the purpose. Everything He gave us was to bring us closer to Him. That's it. Like, yes, we enjoy it, but ultimate purpose to bring us closer to Him. There's also like fringe benefits, and there's fringe benefits to the marital relationship, definitely. But is that the ultimate purpose? When we say رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا, we're asking Allah to give us the gift, by the way, hiba, right? Hiba, it's a gift of رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا, from our spouses and our children, the coolness of our eyes. First of all, that's a gift. Not everybody has that. It's a gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that your spouses and your children would be the coolness of your eyes. If you have that, you have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it, because it is a gift and not everybody has it. And it's not something to be taken for granted. Second, yes, they can be the coolness of your eyes, but is that the ultimate purpose? Is that the ultimate purpose of why I'm put on this earth? To have coolness in my eyes? No. This is a gift, but my ultimate purpose should be clear. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I've only created jinn and humans for one purpose, which is to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These things, these gifts are supposed to help me in that service, to help me in that ibadah. There are the benefits, the gifts that come along the way, and the fringe benefits that come along the way, but that's not the ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose is to bring me nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what we do with gifts is we start worshipping the gift. We start becoming attached to the gift. We take the gift that's supposed to be a path and make it the end. We take the gift that's supposed to be a means and make it the goal. So when we do that, we take a gift. It's supposed to be something to, even if it's just to extract gratefulness, gratitude, that brings us closer to Allah. So that's the point of the gift. Whatever it is, it should be something that's a means. We take the gift though, and we inject these gifts into our hearts and become ultimately attached to them. And as a result of that, we become terrified of losing them. That's a consequence. Fear of loss is a consequence of doing that. Assalamu alaikum. Fear of loss is a consequence of taking these gifts and starting to, we take the gift and we turn away from the giver. That's why we have that type of anxiety. That anxiety wouldn't exist with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes. Yeah. Okay, good question. So when you have your other ups and you have the good thing, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Again, what you're describing it's love of dunya. It's attachment to dunya because you're saying that okay, when you have the good things in dunya, you naturally want them to stay, right? Protect it, and you're afraid of losing it, and it begins to consume you. This is the problem. This is again the child who sees only the toy car and is terrified of it being taken away because he doesn't see the real car. Remember at the beginning I said this is just a glimpse? Whatever good you have in this life is just a sample. If that you understand, but when you see it in that context, it's not this it's not the same anymore. Because even though it's great, you know that it's just a pointer to the real thing. You're yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you the only way that really you can do that and say it's okay that at some point I'm not going to have it is I'm going to go back to that example. When you sit with that boy who has the toy car and suppose he really loves that car and one day he gets it as a gift, okay, and he's sitting with this car in front of him and he's so into the car and he's so afraid that it might get scratched or it might get lost or someone might take it, right? But that's because he didn't still see the real car. He still really didn't. He's in love with that car so much. But imagine you take that kid and you take him outside, and now he has the toy car in his hand and he sees the real car. Is he going to be just as afraid of losing that toy car? No, he's not. By no means. If that car gets scratched, if that car gets taken, yes, he's going to be sad, but his eyes are on the real thing. You see the difference? His eyes are on the real thing and he knows there's something better. No matter how great that car is, he knows there's something better and his eyes are on that. So his attachment to the toy becomes completely transformed. It's okay now if someone were to come and scratch that toy car, yeah, he's going to be like disappointed, but ultimately he still sees that there's something better. Do you get what I mean? The fact that we're so afraid and the level of our fear is proportional to how much we aren't seeing the real thing with our hearts. We really still are focused on dunya and having it a certain way here. Shh. Okay. So people basically. Yes. 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 Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah. For your children, that mercy is. Yeah. For your child. Yeah. So seeing your child especially, or someone you love, going in, hurting, or going in a way that um, you know that it will hurt them. I really think, of course, that's going to hurt, and it's a huge test. The only way you're going to survive that test is to put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to realize that you're not in control. You cannot save your child. You yourself, that's the hardest thing, is to let go of the illusion of control, because you never actually had it. You let go of the illusion and the need for control. You love your child, yes, and you do everything in your power to try to help your child, to try to save your child, but knowing ultimately that you're just like Musa alayhi salam with the staff, that you aren't making the sea open, right? You are just doing your part because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you to. But ultimately the control, لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. There's no change in state, there's no change in anything, there's no power and there's no strength except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm going to end inshallah قولي قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم. سبحانك الله وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.